Facilities strategy is running into limits. Leadership didn't price in. Facilities strategies were built on a familiar premise. Resilience investments would reduce risk, stabilize operations, and protect long-term value. What many organizations are discovering instead is a new class of cost, operational friction, that is eroding those assumptions earlier than expected. This friction is not driven by a lack of resilience spending. It is emerging because resilience measures themselves are colliding with legacy systems, regulatory frameworks, and incomplete alignment between facilities, technology, and enterprise strategy. The result is a growing execution gap between what facilities are expected to deliver and what existing systems can realistically support. Backup power is creating new exposure, not just redundancy. Backup power was once treated as a passive insurance policy, installed to sit idle until the grid failed. In 2026, that assumption no longer holds. As on-site generators, batteries, and hybrid systems proliferate, utilities and regulators are treating these assets as part of the broader reliability landscape. Even non-exporting systems are drawing scrutiny for emissions compliance, safety risk, and grid interaction, pulling facilities into permitting, reporting, and coordination requirements that extend well beyond emergency use. What was once a backstop is now regulated infrastructure. The operational burden has risen alongside that scrutiny. Hybrid systems introduce advanced controls, software dependencies, and ongoing commissioning demands that many facilities teams were never resourced to manage, while insurers increasingly assess backup assets as potential sources of loss rather than automatic risk reductions. The friction rarely appears as a single failure. It accumulates through longer timelines, higher compliance costs, and external advisory spend, costs that were not priced into original resilience business cases and are now surfacing earlier than leadership expected. Thermal resilience is exposing design-era assumptions. Thermal resilience is often framed as a cooling capacity problem. Recent research suggests the issue runs deeper. Analysis from National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, indicates that sustained heat events are pushing commercial buildings beyond the conditions they were designed to handle, not just in peak demand, but in duration. Systems optimized for efficiency under historical norms are struggling under prolonged thermal stress. Facilities are encountering HVAC systems that technically meet specifications but fail under extended heat. Control systems optimized for energy savings that cannot adapt quickly. Cascading failures when heat stress intersects with grid instability. The friction here is structural. Incremental retrofits cannot easily correct design assumptions embedded decades earlier. Capital requirements expand, timelines stretch, and operational risk rises, often without a clear path to resolution. Hardened systems are locking capital into uncertain futures. Hardening infrastructure, elevating equipment, flood-proofing assets, reinforcing envelopes, is accelerating in response to insurance pressure and regulatory signals. But these investments are increasingly being made before organizations finalize long-term site and load strategies. Guidance and risk assessments from the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, show that facilities are committing capital to protect assets whose future role is still under debate. Load growth projections, electrification plans, and even geographic exposure remain fluid, yet hardening decisions are often irreversible. This creates a different kind of friction, reduced strategic flexibility. Capital becomes locked into sites and systems, just as uncertainty around climate exposure, grid access, and operational viability increases. Why operational friction is now a strategic cost. Taken together, these pressures reveal a pattern facilities leaders are confronting first. Resilience assets increase regulatory and operational complexity. Design limits amplify the cost of climate variability. Capital protection measures constrain future optionality. Operational friction accumulates across departments and timelines, often surfacing as delays, redesigns, and unplanned spending, rather than headline failures. By the time these costs appear in financial reporting, facilities teams have already absorbed the impact. The facilities challenge, the central challenge for 2026, is not whether organizations invest in resilience. It is whether those investments reduce net risk once operational friction is fully accounted for. Facility strategies built on smooth execution assumptions are colliding with physical, regulatory, and system-level constraints faster than leadership anticipated. That friction is now a material cost, one that demands earlier visibility, clearer governance, and closer alignment between facilities, technology, and enterprise planning. In 2026, resilience without execution realism is no longer a safeguard. It is a source of exposure. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites by Environment and Energy Leader. For partnership opportunities, please reach out to our team.